Hi, Bookends. Welcome to a 10-minute book review. I'm 10. Today's book review is going to be on The Perfumist of Paris by Alka Joshi. Now, if you know our channel, you know this isn't the first time one of her books have been featured. This is the third book in the series. And of course, it's sad that it ended, but, well, maybe it didn't, maybe it did, you know. But yeah. So, jumping right on in, we like to start off every book review with a star point, as in out of 10 stars, how many stars does this particular book garner. We also like to give a rating, as in if this was a movie or a television show, what would it be rated? Star point, of course, a 10 out of 10. I'm going to tell you why. This isn't me just being a fan of Ms. Joshi, because honestly, I don't know her personally. But yeah, 10 out of 10. And for a rating, this would probably be like a PG. It's written in a way that any of the sexual scenes, because obviously the characters are married, so any sexual scenes are kind of fade to black instead of just all out, all the bits and pieces. And that's a good thing. You'll see why later on, why it's a good thing, but it's definitely a good thing. Also, too, just want to say I'm dressed a little festive because it is the last book, so just trying to be a little pretty for the last book. Anyway, so jumping right on in, this book in the series is special. And the reason why I say that is because the first book, The Henna Artist, that starred Lakshmi. Of course, Radha was in it as well, and there were some parts where she was speaking, like when she finally got to her sister. Of course, that's seen through her eyes. But in the second book, that was mostly Lakshmi as well. I mean, there was Malik as well, but for the most part, the voice was Lakshmi. In The Perfumist, it's almost completely Radha. And that is interesting because we get to hear her voice in the other books as more of a peripheral or more as a character who is just adding some depth to Lakshmi. So to give an example, in the first book, Radha was more so thrown in, kind of, in a way, as like a monkey wrench to Lakshmi's life, because Lakshmi was already enjoying a level of success as a henna artist. She already had her house built. She already had the money that she was looking for. So her sister was kind of like a monkey wrench, like, oh no, what do we do now? This random child, what? My parents were still doing it. What? Oh my God. Yeah. And the second book, Radha was more so of a peripheral character as well, because we don't see too much of her in it, but we do see her son that she gave up for adoption in it quite a bit. Now in this book, we actually sit with her. So I'm going to tell you my personal feelings after I break it down and give you the review, but they're good. So we meet Radha, and she's in Paris. She's working as a perfumist, which in my opinion is kind of like a chemist, kind of like a scent chemist, because her whole job is to help create new scents that are going to be the next big thing. Oh, and it's in the 70s. This one is set in the 70s, 1974. And she lives in an apartment with her husband in Paris. She has 2 beautiful daughters with him. And it's interesting how the author played with 1 being mixed and 2 with colorism. And I really think that was an interesting thing she did, because usually we see those type of word plays and situational plays done with Black people or African American people or people of the African diaspora who were taken and mixed. And so the mixing of nationalities and colors aren't as new or different or odd to us. And so we have something called colorism as a result of it. It has a name. So Radha, she is married to a white man by the name of Pierre. Pierre loves her very much. They have 2 daughters. One is a lighter skin complexion, one is a darker skin complexion. And Radha kind of thinks that her darker skinned daughter is harder to deal with. Not because she's dark skinned. That's not the reason why at all. She just feels like this one has a chip on her shoulder. Why can't she be happy like the little one? The little one's happy. Why is this one not happy? She ends up finding out the reason why her older daughter is not happy is because her older daughter finds herself in situations where colorism is put into place, as opposed to her younger daughter just being accepted as the slightly darker skinned version of her father. And there was an actual I can't even talk. There was a very interesting part of the book where Radha is talking about, we can't keep a nanny. We can't keep a nanny. Why can't we keep a nanny? And she later on finds out that the reason why they had to fire, or the reason why her daughter laid hands, her oldest daughter laid hands. I believe in that. I believe in that. If someone wants to bless you, you bless them back. Anyway, so her oldest daughter lays hands on the nanny. And Radha is like, oh my God, why are you laying hands? Why are you laying hands? Now we got to fire this lady. Why are you laying hands? She laid hands because the nanny was like, you need to stay out of the sun. Wear a hat when you go out, or be as dark and ugly as your mama. And her daughter was like, Mama, not my mama. Not my mama. We not playing with her. So yeah, her daughter laid hands. And I'm 100% for it. But it kind of showed those feelings that people who are either mixed raced or come from a family where there's a gradient of colors, and where maybe not the family puts an emphasis on that gradient, but those outside of the family. Sometimes it is the family, but in this case, it's those outside of the family. Obviously, Pierre loves both of his daughters, and Radha loves both of her daughters. She just doesn't know why this one's so difficult. Radha is also dealing with a mother-in-law who feels as though she should not be working. Now, mind you, mother-in-law is a multimillionaire. Now, I don't know how far 70s multimillionaire money can get you, but multimillionaire is multimillionaire. So mama got money. Mama had to get this money from somewhere. But she's mad at Pierre's wife, Radha, our girl, because she got her own job. What sense does that make? Like, there are really people like that. Like, oh no, I'm going to work for my money. I'm not going to be dependent on a man. Oh no, not me, ever. But since you're my son's wife, you need to be at his beck and call whenever, 24/7. You also need to be at my grandchildren's beck and call whenever, 24/7, while I'm off in Bali, spending the money that I earned on things that I want and doing the things I'd like to do. So yeah, that was very interesting. Diving more so into the actual story itself, when we meet Radha, she has been given a special assignment, and she's looking at this picture. It's a part of the assignment. And in the picture, I believe the woman's name is Olympia. Let me just check that really quick. Be right back. Okay, so upon finishing my research, I believe that it was Olympia. My notes are gone. I had them on Goodreads, but apparently on my phone, I have a new phone, can't figure it out. But I believe it was Olympia. And in the photo, it's this, painting. There's a woman. She's painted in the nude. Her name is Olympia, and I believe that there's an interesting backstory behind her. Yes. So at first, Radha thinks that she is just a common mistress, either financially like a mistress, like, she just has her own money, or sexually like a mistress, so she is the lover or lady of a rich man being painted. But as it turns out, as she looks more into this picture, because she just keeps looking and looking and looking and looking, because the person who hired her is like, I want you to come up with a fragrance. I'm going to try to put a picture up here if I can. Editing 10, please do your thing. But yes, so she's been told that she has to come up with a fragrance that embodies this woman. Now, if there's something that's very special about Radha, she is able to suss out scents. She can break them down right in her head, like vanilla with pomegranates and rocks from Mars. Like she's just able to break things down like that. The more she looks into this painting, the more she finds out about the actual woman behind the painting, or I should say the actual muse in the painting, the actual model. And she finds out that the woman in the painting is actually an artist herself in her own right, but she found that she had to be muses for male artists so that she'd be able to afford her own supplies to be able to do her own artwork. And this is kind of sad because it was demeaning. It was kind of a way of men saying, huh, you think you're an artist? You're nothing more than a meager model. I could find a dozen of you anywhere. No one cares what you do. Just lay down naked and let me paint you. That kind of a thing, you know? You're not that kind of a, you're not special. You may think that you have talent, but you're just a woman. And that's supposed to be like the ultimate insult. You're just a woman. Disgusting, ew. So yes. She ends up going through that, and Radha starts to identify with her to some degree, because in the landscape that she's in, yes, she has a job. Yes, it is a very significant job that would not have normally been given to a woman. I think she's only the second woman in the office, and the other woman, well, there's three women in the office. One is like the head. She's in charge of everything. And then there is the secretary who's just in charge of phone calls. And then there's the Radha, a perfumist, a job for men. And she's not even white. Oh my goodness. She's a woman and she's brown. How dare she? How dare she have such a prominent position being a woman and brown? Oh my God, no. So yeah, she kind of identifies with her in that way. And as the book goes along, she ends up going back to India to find the components that she needs to be able to make a scent that matches Olympia. And as with the other books, it is a historical contemporary fiction. So of course, none of this really actually happened. And since it's contemporary, you know nothing huge or otherworldly is going to happen. You just know it's going to be kind of the day in the life of, or a week or a month or a year, what have you, in the life of this particular person. And when it comes to her, when she goes back to see Lakshmi, her big sister, she has to confront certain feelings and certain thoughts and certain wants and certain actions that she would not have normally had to if she wasn't back home, because there's a contrast. And that's very true. When you're in I don't want to say a bad situation, because she was not in a bad situation. But when you're in a stressful situation or a soul draining situation, what happens? Your mind and your body and your soul gets used to being in that situation. And you find the joys where you can, you find the entertainment where you can, but for the most part, you're just going through the motions. But when she goes back to India, she can't just go through the motions, because these are no longer the motions that she's used to going through. She's not the same person. And when she goes back to India, even her sister's like, cover your hair, dress like this, so that people won't think that you're not from around here. She's like, of course I'm from around here. I was born in a village. It's like, yeah, but you don't present like you were born in the village. So it's kind of like if you were born in the hood, raised in the hood, grew up in the hood, and then moved away from the hood and were like gone from the hood for maybe a good 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, and then come back. The same person you were in the hood, or the same presentation you had when you were in the hood, isn't going to be the same presentation you have when you come back. And so you're going to look like a mark. And like, oh, they're not from around these parts. Let's see what kind of car they're driving, because I know I can get into that. You know, that kind of a situation. So basically just tries to change how her sister looks a little bit, like dress-wise, so she looks more like, she presents more like the people around her. So that's something that Radha wasn't prepared for, because in her mind, she's no different. She's the same. This is home. But what do you do when home is two different places? Like legit two different places. Like her home is, of course, with her big sister. I'm so sorry. My hair is falling into my face because the fan's on, because it's hot. But when home is with her big sister, the woman who raised her after her mother died, but also home is back in Paris with her husband and her children and her life and her career. She's a woman who's divided. She has two homes. She would love to stay with Lakshmi in India, where it's simpler, but she would also love to go back to Paris where she has a career. So she's a woman divided. And without ruining the story, she meets a lot of different people. Like, I find it interesting. So in the first book, we have an idea of what happens with Lakshmi after she runs away from her marriage, but we don't have all the logistical information. Like, bro, you're a 17-year-old running away. How are you surviving? Like, this is like what, the 50s or late 50s, early 60s. How are you surviving? How are you eating? And so we find out that Lakshmi actually ran away and was able to get to these people who are, I don't know what they would call them. Like, I know in the US we'd call them sex workers. I guess in Europe they'd be called prostitutes. Courtesans, that's what they call them in the book, courtesans. And so these courtesans are essentially fancy sex workers who only appeal to the rich and mighty men. So if you don't got the cash, you can't get that. So Lakshmi goes there, but she is not one of the courtesans. She's not trained to be a courtesan. She goes there and she's like, hey, I know y'all have sex for a living. Cool, not here to judge. I make these packets, these like herbal packets, because, you know, sometimes when you have sex, you make a baby. And if you don't want one of those, I can make you these packets that prevents all that, or stops it after it happens. Just drink the tea, no baby. So they're like, yes, of course, girl, come on. We got a room for you. And I don't believe that's something that Radha knew. But when she tells Lakshmi, like, hey, I need to find this particular fragrance, can I come visit you? And Lakshmi's like, yeah, sure, come on through. She brings her there because she's like, these women know sense, because that is how they're able to get these men to come off that cash. They come up off that cash because you smell good. You look good, you feel good, you smell good. And they're like, yes, this is the experience I want to pay for. So she goes to, I don't want to call it a harem because it's not really a harem. It's a home where these courtesans live. And these are some rich women. Oh my goodness. These are rich women. And normally when you would think about a situation like this, you would think about trafficking. You would think about people doing stuff against their will. You would think about if there's any girls there, then they're being forced into situations that aren't very helpful for girls or anyone to be in. And that's not the case. A few of the courtesans have children of their own, and those children aren't actively in the business. Like, they're more so in the business of hospitality than in the business of hospitality. Wink, wink. But yes, so they're not being forced into these positions. In fact, they feel as though it's empowering. And Radha, once again, can't play the game. Lakshmi knows how to play coy, how to play stupid, how to play up her hand as a woman. And Radha is like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not going to play dumb. I know what this is. There's this funny part in the book. Well, to me, it was funny. I don't know if the author meant it to be funny or not. But there is a scent seller who's like basically sells oils, things of that nature. And he comes to where the courtesans live. And he's like, hey, I got these scents. Does anybody know what they are? Like, trying to play the guessing game. Like, can you tell what this is? Can you tell what this is? Can you tell what this is? And the women are playing coy, like, oh, I don't know. But Radha's like, vanilla, cardamom, rose. And the guy's like, oh, this isn't fun anymore. And Lakshmi is kind of like, you gotta play along. You gotta play along. But I think Radha is more like us than she is. See, that's, okay. Let me just get into my feelings about the book now. It made me uncomfortable. This book came out, I believe, earlier this year, but I just recently finished it. And the reason why I just recently finished it is because it made me uncomfortable. And the reason why it made me uncomfortable is because I enjoyed the other two books because they were gossipy. They were very far removed from my life or from anyone I know. And so I could just read the story and enjoy the juicy gossip and all the things that happened. With this one, it comes closer to home. One, because it takes place in the 70s. Now, if you know anyone who's born, or I shouldn't say born, but anyone who was grown in the 90s for the most part, they were born in the 70s. So, a lot of the people who would have been around during that time are marriage material for people who are my age. I'm already married, but they're marriage material for people that are my age. So what are they? They are our big brothers and sisters. They are the older, I don't want to say older people, but they are like the, depending on when you graduated, they're the seniors. They are, seniors, high school seniors. I forget, this might be viewed internationally. So in the US, high school senior is the 12th grade, the last free grade, and then you pay for college. But yeah, basically we're in each other's sphere of knowledge or sphere of contact. So they're Generation X, that's what they are, Generation X, one step before us millennials. So that's one thing that brings them closer. Also, Radha doesn't believe in the male-female role dynamic. She's like, if I'm working, why should I be cooking? If I'm cooking, then you'll eat what I make. I'm not going to play dumb if I'm not dumb. And it's interesting because Lakshmi isn't like that. Lakshmi will play the game. Lakshmi knows how to play stupid. Lakshmi is not stupid. She's a doctor, but she knows how to play dumb when playing dumb is necessary. But I believe because Lakshmi paid for her to go to an actual university, paid for her to actually go to school, things that Lakshmi did not have for herself, Radha ended up having more knowledge of her inner self, her inner workings, and more pride in herself than her sister ended up having. It's not that her sister doesn't have pride in herself, but Radha is like, no, I'm not doing that. You're not making me do that. That is not going to happen. Now, here's where I feel like she cut too close to home. And the author did nothing wrong. But I will say that it cut close to home. That's all I'll say. So there are some scenes in the book. Now, she loves her children. She loves her children. But there are some times like where she says, I cannot connect to them. Sometimes they feel like little strangers. And I'm sorry, if you're a mother and you have never felt like your child is a stranger at some point, then you are not really a mother. And that's because, quite simply, like I have a child myself. He's going to be a teenager in a few years, and I don't like that. But they're little humans. And you spend so much time teaching them, and they're all up under mommy, and they learn from mommy. But they have their own personalities. They're not mommy number 2. They're not mommy 2.0. They're their own people. And sometimes they say things or do things or want things or like things. And you're just like, what? How? I didn't want that. I don't like that. Why are they saying that? Because they're their own person. And so any parent who says they've never been struck with that feeling of, my child's a stranger, just even once or twice, if they say they haven't, they're lying or they don't have kids. That's just what it is. Also, she had an argument with her husband over her role and over how her children are being raised. Her husband's like, bro, you don't need to work. I make enough money. People are going to make fun of me. Everybody sees you going to work and doing all this and all that. And we got a nanny. And now we don't got a nanny. And now, he feels like she should adopt more traditional female roles. Now, here's the thing. He is not a misogynist. He's not acting like you need to be chained to the stove with a chain long enough to reach the bed. No, he's not acting like that. But he is saying like, hey, I make enough money for the both of us. And because you work, people are going to think I don't make enough money for the both of us. And now we don't even got a nanny anymore. So, you could stop working. That's a choice. You could stop working. But he never actually stops her from working. So they have an argument. And to make up for this argument, they have sex. They have adult time. And some of her thoughts before that kind of, I don't really know how to verbalize it without, one, giving anything away, and two, without being too graphic. So the book itself is not in any way graphic. I will say that. But some of the thoughts that she has, like she's not really into it to begin with, but then she kind of gets into it because that's just their ebb and flow. He's not forcing himself on her by any means, but it's kind of just their ebb and flow. This is just what she's used to. They have a disagreement. That disagreement turns into an argument. That argument turns into them not talking to each other. And finally, that not talking to each other ends up with her husband trying to make up in the best way that he can, which is sexually. And that, I think, would hit home with a lot of women, only because, unfortunately, those older generations, those people born in the 70s, people born in the 60s, people born in the 50s and the 40s, generally men were made to feel as though the only emotions you're allowed to feel are anger and happiness and horny. You can't feel sad. Sad is weak. You're weak if you feel sad. Feeling remorse, weak. So how do they show that they're feeling remorseful? How do they show that they're feeling sad? Let me give you something. What can they give immediately? Or what do they feel that can be given immediately and that they feel as though they are good at giving? Some sort of pleasure. Like, here, this is my gift to you. Like, a woman might make during this time, a woman might make a meal to say, I'm sorry. Like, what's your favorite meal? Like, not even what's your favorite meal? Just, your favorite meal is ready. It's on the table. Fork, spoon, knife, bottle of wine. You good? I did it. But for a man, they are instant, or I shouldn't say instant, but they're close to instant way of saying I'm sorry or being remorseful would be what? Trying to provide that woman with pleasure. And she is not oblivious to this. She knows that the reason why they're being sexual is because he's trying to apologize for something that he said earlier, or for the argument that he said. And what she's also admitting too is that it's not just his fault, because she has her issues as well. This book, okay, out of all the books, The Henna Artist is my favorite. But, you know, it's funny. If I'm reading the book, The Henna Artist is my favorite. If I am listening to the book, then the book after, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. That would be my favorite from listening to it, because I love the voice actor for Malik, or for Malik. I love his voice. But if I'm going to say which one of them is the realest, which one feels like it could have happened, which one feels as though it is the most cemented in a reality that is tangible and touchable by people who are alive now and who are relatively young now, it would be this book. This book is the most relatable. And that can be good, but it can also be scary, because if you're not ready to introspect, then that forced introspection can cause you to put it down. And so there are parts in the book that kind of forced me to be introspective, and that made me put it down, because I didn't want to think about me. I just wanted that hot gossip from a long time ago. But instead of getting that, I kind of got some introspection. I'm like, oh, you know, maybe I should put this down and pick up something lighter. This book's too heavy for me right now. Let me put it down and pick up something a little lighter. That said, it was a good read. It was really, really, really good. And I say that this is the last book in the series only because it is listed as a trilogy. But that doesn't mean that the author might not make any other books to go along with it, just because the characters are still alive. And of course, the world still exists. Paris still exists. India still exists. So it's not as though the nations that are in the book are fictitious. So that means there's always the possibility of more. Or at least maybe Malik's story. You never know. There's always more that can be given if she decides to do so. But ultimately, it was a really good read. I would recommend this book to anyone who's 18 years of age or older, only because I don't think that someone who's a younger teenager would have an interest in it, only because it touches on things that they wouldn't know. Also, I like, okay, so if you go back to my review for the first book, I'm going to leave a link to it, or maybe I'll put a card if I can figure that out. But in my first review, I did not like Radha. Like, girl, you got too much mouth and too much attitude for somebody who don't pay any bills and then walked from God knows where, through God knows what, into my house. Girl, you got too much mouth. You could be the city's problem, you could be the state's problem, you could be anybody else's problem, but you don't have to be my problem. Watch that tongue. In the second book, you kind of got to feel that she was aloof. Like, Lakshmi is trying to send her pictures of her son. Lakshmi is trying to give her letters about her son. And Radha is like, no, no. I got my daughters, I got my husband, I got my life in Paris. No, I don't want to hear about him. I think his name is Ravi. I could be wrong. Ravi might be the father's name. But anyway, I don't want to hear about him. And the Perfumist of Paris, you're confronted with thoughts that she has that she doesn't even want to be confronted with. So the both of you are being confronted at the same time. It's not that she doesn't love her son. She is more hurt by the fact that she had to relinquish her son to someone else because she was too young. She was 13 when she had him. You know, that's too young. So she was more so hurt that she had to give up her son than she was aloof about his existence. And if she could just try to pretend as though he didn't exist, it wouldn't hurt so bad. It's almost like having an open wound, and every time it goes to heal, something cuts it back open. She no longer wanted it to be cut back open. She's like, he has a good life. He doesn't know anything about me. He's happy. Let it stand. Let it be. Leave it alone. Don't talk to me about it because I don't need to hurt anymore. And practice avoidance. Yes, a lot of us millennials have practiced avoidance. So yeah, that's what Radha was going through. And also trying to navigate being a working mother. Well, the two things seem oxymoronic, if I'm going to be honest. They seem oxymoronic, even though, socially speaking, they seem oxymoronic, even though they go together, because I too am a working mom. But from a societal point, if you're working, you're supposed to be giving your all to your work. Your work is supposed to be, yeah, everything, pay, give it all. But then also, if you're a mom, you're supposed to give all to being a mom. Give it everything, give it your all. And you can't give your everything and your all to more than one thing, because it's your all, it's your everything. And a point that was brought out in the book was that her husband was allowed to have these feelings. Her husband was allowed to put his career first and his family second. But the moment that a woman does that, she becomes a bad mother, a bad woman. But if she puts her career second and her child first, and it's like, you should have never been in the workplace anyway, you womb haver. You should have never been here. This is why we don't need to hire women, because look at it, run home to its children. So it's two sides of the same ugly coin. You're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. Doesn't matter if you win at one thing, you're going to lose at the other. But having that presented through an Indian woman in 1974, far removed from 2023, you would think, okay, well, there's not that much to go on, or go off on, I should say, now, because obviously it has zero to do with what's happening with us today. But the author has a way of turning a historical contemporary into a mirror, which a historical contemporary isn't a mirror. It's just exactly what it is. It's a historical contemporary. It's a day in the life of someone who lived a long time ago. But somehow she turns that into a mirror so that it happened a long time ago, but it's almost like it's still happening now. Yeah. Really good author, really good read. I highly recommend it. I'm sad it's the end of the series, but it ended well. I'll say it ended strong as a contemporary can end. So yeah, this has been a 10-minute book review. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Bye, Bookends.